Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Late Week Edition. That's what I'm going to call it. It's our second show of the week, by the way.
Late Week Edition.
Late Week Edition.
Okay.
It's not the first episode of the week, it's the second.
Yeah.
Did I say our names? I don't remember. Mine is more Colby.
It's like the late night show, but for fantasy football.
I know. Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always. Excuse me.
What's up?
And on this episode of the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast, we are going to talk about the other half of our top 10 running backs. So we're basically doing two shows on this. Usually we don't do a part one and a part two. We usually try to get it done relatively quickly, but getting bogged down by talking about some of the top 5 running backs is kind of painful.
I knew it was going to happen too.
He knew it was going to happen. And I was mad because I was like, it's not going to happen. Now I feel like this one we're talking about, we can go to start off, we can jump back into Austin Eckler if you want. I don't think there's any differences in our top.
Sure.
Oh, we do have one. So we have another running back to talk about. We're not talking about Austin Eckler.
Yeah.
We talked about it on the last show. Check it out there. But anyway, yeah, we're going to talk about the rest of our top 10 running backs. If you want to watch the previous show, please check it out. It talks about the top 5 running backs that we have, and these are the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Before we do that, check out our website, fantasyjimmies.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms, be sure to leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below your favorite running back that we talk about on the show. You're like, this guy you're so low on him, you're just stupid.
He's literally the best player in the NFL.
Yeah. So just tell us how you feel. Anyway. So in the last one, we ended off with me talking about Jonathan Taylor, CMC, Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Najee Harris. That's my top 5. And Rick's top 5, which is JT, CMC, Derrick Henry, same as mine. But then he swaps it out with Austin Eckler being number 4, and then we both had Najee Harris. So we conjointively think, if that makes sense, 4 out of the top 5. We agree of 4 out of the top 5, which is not normal for us.
Yeah. Really, 5 out of the top 6.
Yeah, I guess that's true. But we have some differences here in the second half. In the second half of this situation, and Rick is higher on some guys than I am. We do agree in some different areas, so we're going to go through from 6 all the way down to 10. We'll take you through some of those. All right. So I had number 6, Austin Eckler. Rick had number 6, Dalvin Cook. And we talked about both of those guys on the last show. Is there any reason why you have, I'll just say, is there any particular reason why you have Dalvin Cook as low as you do, just to recap, and then I'll tell you why I have Austin Eckler low?
Yeah, I would just say you brought this up in the last show. The coaching staff, his injury history, where he's never played more than 14 games. And then just that last year, I know his touchdowns were low, but if you just look at their points per game, it was a huge difference. Dalvin Cook was, I think, 9th, and that's if you take out McCaffrey and Derrick Henry. If you include those guys, he was 11th in points per game, and Austin Eckler was 2nd, and it was about a 5-point difference, 5 to 6 point difference. So, yeah, the touchdowns would have helped Dalvin Cook, obviously, but Eckler was, to me, better last year significantly than Dalvin Cook. So, and as I said, the offense isn't going to change at all. He's still going to have Justin Herbert. If anything, the offense hopefully will be better with Herbert going into his 3rd year. Offensive line continuing to improve in the 2nd year under that coaching staff. So it's really, to me, not many negatives with Eckler, while there's a couple more question marks with Dalvin Cook. That's really the only difference.
Okay. Makes sense. For me, like I said, previous show, Austin Eckler is number 6 for me, not number 4, only because I don't think he has like the track record that I guess Dalvin Cook has, and I feel like I listen to podcasts and people say that, and I'm like, that guy's an idiot. He doesn't have any opinion.
But when you say it,
when I say it, it's legit. No, but anyway. So no, I think Dalvin Cook has a track record. They're both the same age, and Dalvin Cook has the track record of actually being a top level running back multiple times. And I feel like if they use Dalvin Cook the way they should, that even if, he's one of those running backs that, like we talked about on the last show, 2 years ago, he had, I believe, 17 touchdowns, which obviously put him in the top conversation. But he was also number 2 in the league in points per game in the year prior, and he had 13 total touchdowns. Whereas I feel like if Austin Eckler scored 13 touchdowns next year or 12 touchdowns, he would still be a top 6 or 7 running back, but he wouldn't jump into that top conversation. So I think it's a better shot for Dalvin Cook, yardage-wise, to ascend him into that category of, top 5 without the touchdowns, whereas Austin Eckler doesn't. But, yeah, so I just don't like Austin Eckler as much, but he is a PPR killer. So,
yeah.
Anyway. Let's talk about our number 7 guys. So we'll start off with who's number 7 on the ECR here.
So you're doing it the right way.
I can't even do it the right way because we'll do it the right way for wide receivers. Because number 7 we already talked about. Okay. But anyway, I'll just go off my list. Number 7, I have Nick Chubb. And Rick has Nick Chubb 8. So Rick has his guy. Well, you know what? The next 2 guys, Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb. I have Chubb 7, Joe Mixon 8. Rick has Joe Mixon 7, and I have Nick Chubb 8. Curious, Rick, tell me why you have those 2 players reversed.
It's so funny because in real football, I think Chubb is the better running back, and I would much rather have Nick Chubb, and I think he's significant. I wouldn't even say significantly, but he is definitely, I would prefer over Joe Mixon. I think he's the better player. But in terms of fantasy, Nick Chubb had a lot of opportunity this past year, and the Browns' offense, into his defense, was not as good as people expected it to be. But he kind of had a similar year to Dalvin Cook. It was really only 1 point off, and there was a big chunk of the season last year that Kareem Hunt was out, and it's kind of weird how sometimes Chubb is better with Kareem Hunt in there, but sometimes he's not because he gets more opportunity. And he was ridiculous. 5.5 yards a carry is insane if we're getting over 200 carries. But he just didn't have enough in the receiving category. Only had 25 targets. The year before that, he only had 18. So receiving is a big problem with him. And I think it's just, despite him being super efficient on the ground, I don't know if it's just the Browns offense or they don't use him enough on the goal line, but he gets a decent amount of touchdowns, but not as much. The really only difference here to me, even though I like Nick Chubb a lot more, is Mixon. That Bengals offense is ridiculous. Again, if you look at this past season in points per game, Joe Mixon was actually 3rd if you take out Derrick Henry in points per game this past year, with 16.7 points per game. I believe he finished as the RB3 on the season. He's in a Bengals offense that is not going to change at all. And if anything, it's going to get better because they're going to focus heavy on the offensive line this offseason, which will only do wonders for Mixon. He's the clear workhorse in a high-powered offense. I think just for fantasy purposes, I'd rather have Mixon than Chubb, and it's gross to say.
Yeah.
They're very close, though, obviously.
It's very gross to say. I'm confused. They didn't change coaching staffs, right? It's the same guy. Stefanski. Right?
Yeah, it's Stefanski.
Yeah. So, I don't like. I will say this, and I like Nick Chubb. Rick brought me to the dark side, and I do love Nick Chubb. I have some of the same concerns as you, Rick, when it comes to Nick on the Nick Chubb side of things. I do have some of those same concerns, and it's interesting that they don't want to get him involved more. And we talked about Dalvin Cook on the last show, his opportunity share being up at 79%. And Kevin Stefanski, coming from the Viking system, we kind of both thought, even though I wasn't like super high on Chubb in years past, we both kind of thought that the opportunity share that Stefanski learned to give Dalvin Cook would carry over here in Cleveland, where he would just get 70%, 80% opportunity share. And that has not happened. In the 2 seasons that he has coached the team, he actually has dropped from 2019, where he had 73% opportunity share, to 51% in 2020 and 58% in 2021. That is my biggest concern. It astounds me how much Nick Chubb can do with only 58% of the work.
Yeah.
When he's on the field and they're giving him the work, he's elite. Like, he's very, very good. And they just don't give him the opportunity to do it. So this year he had 176 weighted opportunities. In 2020, he had 143 weighted opportunities. And weighted opportunities are essentially just recalibrated opportunities by essentially discounting carries and adding a multiplier to targets based on the average fantasy points generated by each type of touch. That was straight from Player Profiler, and my brain hurts now. So I think for me, like, when you talk about his opportunities just the last 2 years, like, he needs to be in the 200 to 250 touch conversation. And he had 228 carries and 20 catches. So he was right around 248, which is good. But I just don't know if he played all his games too, right?
He played 14.
He played 14. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're going to be in a conversation where if he does play all 16, he can get, close to 300. But I do want to see him on the field more and running it more and getting more involved in the offense. Which would be great. But anyway, but I have Nick Chubb higher because I think his opportunity share is much more prevalent and larger than Joe Mixon's. And Joe Mixon also he's kind of hitting old man strength wall at this point.
I mean, I feel like he's the same age though as everybody else we've talked about, isn't he?
Oh God, I feel like Joe Mixon's been in the league.
Nick
Chubb is older. I just feel like Joe Mixon's been in the league for 70 years.
It's because he's been getting a lot of work since he's come into the league.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
This is the first time that Joe Mixon has been utilized the way we wanted him to be. I think the only year that was kind of close to that was 2019, where he had 278 opportunities and 35 catches. So he had over 300 touches.
It's also the touchdowns. He had 16 total touchdowns too, which is a lot. But
that makes me
think. Bengals offense. It's the Bengals offense, and he might be more efficient this year too with the better offensive line, hopefully. But just to put in perspective of how good Nick Chubb is, which is just annoys me so much that I have to rank Joe Mixon ahead. And my love for Nick Chubb, he led the NFL in yards per carry, and he was second in the NFL in yards, and he only had 228 carries. So Najee Harris had 300, Joe Mixon had 292, Antonio Gibson had 258. Derrick Henry, who everybody talks about how dominant he was, he had 219 and he had 300 less rushing yards. So he pretty much had the exact same amount of carries. He had 9 less carries than Nick Chubb with 300 less rushing yards.
Wow.
More than 300 less. That's how dominant Nick Chubb was on the ground last season.
It's freaking awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, he's my RB8.
Here's my other question pertaining to Joe Mixon. We just brought up, you just brought up the 16 touch total, and in the highest total in seasons previous that he has hit is 9 total touchdowns, and he did it in 2018, where he finished as running back 9. This year scored 16, had the most amount of receiving yards he's ever had, most amount of rushing yards he's ever had, most amount of actually not the second most amount of receptions he had, and obviously most amount of touchdowns. Yep. And he finished number 5 in 18 points per game. I believe that's based on PPR. do we think the touchdowns are going to, is there going to be regression in the touchdown category? And if so, he scores 16 touchdowns. And he still is only top 5 in points per game.
He's number 3. Who's number 3? Oh, well, I guess if you...
Yeah.
He's 4 in points per game. So, yeah, I mean... But my thing is, he has historically been in one of the worst, not just offenses, but worst teams. And now all of a sudden he has Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I mean, he was on pace last year before Burrow tore his ACL to having a really good year. He had 4 touchdowns in 6 games, so it wouldn't have been 16 and 16, but he might have had 12 or 13 touchdowns, which is probably what he's going to do this year. But the hope is if he gets a couple less touchdowns, he's a little bit more efficient with a better offensive line, which I'm banking on. I doubt the Bengals don't address the offensive line this offseason. I think that's going to be a top priority for them. So if he can go from 4.1 yards to carry to 4.5, 4.6.
That would be fantastic.
Right.
I think the other thing is, too, and I think you're missing this reality, and it's a 1 rank difference, so we don't need to fight over it, but I like Joe Mixon, but I do feel like Nick Chubb, and you've said this before, I think he's more talented than Joe Mixon. And you look at what Nick Chubb did this year, and I have to pull it up in front of me because I don't see it. Last year he scored 9 touchdowns total, Nick Chubb, and had a .81 fantasy point per opportunity total. And Joe Mixon had 16 total touchdowns, and he had a .85 fantasy point per opportunity total. And I think there were games this year where if you look at the early portion of the season in the game logs, week 1, number 2 overall fantasy points, 25 fantasy points. I think this is in PPR. Number 36 after that, 29, 23, 33. Everyone was looking at Joe Mixon going, "This is it. It's over. He's done." And then he finished number 4, 24. And then after that game in week 7, from week 7 on, it was number 2 overall in that week, number 4, number 2, number 25, 32, 36, 2, 21, 8, 3, 1, 1. So from week 8 on, gross. He was very, very good. And from the beginnings of the season, he was garbage. So, and efficiency-wise, I don't know, how many Joe Mixon games did you watch where you had to watch Joe Mixon?
I watched a decent amount of Bengals games this year, but I wasn't too focused on Joe Mixon. I don't know. There was running backs I was more focused on. When I watched him,
he would put up these great numbers. He would put up these great numbers right at the end of the game, and fantasy points were really good. But I remember watching him, and he had, like you said, he had the 4.1 yards per carry. But I always watched him, and I'm like, something just seems gross. He would rush for 3 yards and 3 yards and 3 yards and 3 yards and put Joe Mixon in and even in the Super Bowl, Joe Mixon would rush for 3 yards and 3 yards and 3 yards. And then he would go out and have a really big play where he'd rush for 12 yards, and it would kind of save the yards per carry total. And so it's I guess every running back is like that, but for me, I look at Nick Chubb and I'm like, that guy seems more talented and more apt to be a huge running back, next season, where he could bust out and be a top 2, top 3 running back next year, because there is a little bit of an opening at the top here. Besides Jonathan Taylor. So it's I see him having a better opportunity of doing that than Joe Mixon. Now, I totally get your point on Joe Mixon being in this better offense than than Cleveland.
I was also going to say is Kareem Hunt is still under contract.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And he'll be back. He only played in 5 games this past year? 6 games?
Yeah.
He played in 8 actually, so he played half the season.
Mm-hmm.
But if he plays another, has a healthy season, plays in 14, 15 games,
yeah, I
think that's going to hurt Nick Chubb. Unfortunately,
yeah.
For in terms of fantasy,
mm-hmm.
And again, you know how much I like Nick Chubb. It's just fantasy football is all about statistics. It's all about total numbers, total catches, total receiving yards, total touchdowns, and I just think Mixon is going to get a lot more pass catching work. He's still going to get a ton of carries. in a high-powered offense, it's hard for me to. I want to agree with you. I want to put Nick Chubb ahead of Joe Mixon.
I tried. I did what I could.
We'll see when.
I thought it was going to be a moment where you're like, "I'll switch."
We'll see when July comes around.
Yeah, that's fair. You're right. The Kareem Hunt thing does scare the crap out of me because Samaje P. Ryan didn't even dive for a ball in the Super Bowl, and he's trash. I don't even know why they started getting him involved. And
probably will be not on the team next year. It'll be Chris Evans
to be honest
or some random third down back.
And so Joe Mixon is going to be the guy, but it's funny because I still think that even with Joe Mixon being the full-on guy for the Bengals, right, I still think Nick Chubb's going to get more opportunities, and he's only going to maybe get at 60% opportunity share. So
we'll see.
We'll see what happens. But yeah, so I have Chubb 7, Joe Mixon 8. Rick has Joe Mixon 7, Nick Chubb 8. And then we move on to the next guy who we both have as the 9th guy. And Rick, I don't know if you did past your 10th. So when we get to 10, we can discuss where.
I'll talk about the reason we have a different 10th guy.
Okay. So Alvin Kamara is the 9th guy, and the ECR on Alvin Kamara is
interesting.
Was
he 11 running back? Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to find him. So many names on this list. He's 11th on this list. Now, there's a justifiable argument here. Drew Brees left 2 years ago. Saints have no cap space. Coach is gone. I'm going to make an argument that that Michael Thomas will probably not be there either. And that's
if Michael Thomas isn't there.
Yeah, and Michael Thomas isn't there. He hasn't been there.
Okay.
Then there's also, to me, a possibility that Kamara might be dealt in that, which would change this whole conversation with Kamara. But assuming Kamara stays, there is a chance that the Saints might have one of the worst offenses in the league next year.
Yeah.
They don't even have cap space to bring in a quarterback. They're going to have to draft one, and they're going to have to start the full season. They're in cap jail right now. So the question is, and I think that's reasonable to push Kamara down the board. I think that the Saints blew this year, and offensively they had some moments where they were okay, but even with Winston on the field, even with Taysom Hill on the field, they still kind of sucked. They weren't really there offensively.
Yeah.
And we've seen Alvin Kamara have success in fantasy football, despite the offense completely being trash. So that is why I have Alvin Kamara at 9, because I think that based on if they get a rookie in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do rookies do? They throw it to running backs and tight ends.
They dump it off,
Yeah. So I feel like this is a really good opportunity for Kamara to just get an absolute load of catches. And in PPR and half PPR formats, that's really good. And we're not telling you to, because if you're drafting, right, and you're drafting the 9th running back off the board, you're more than likely drafting 10, 11, or 12, which means that you can flip into the next round at the turn and draft a Swift, Javonte, Cam Akers type running back. And that gives you a buffer. So you take a chance on Kamara, and then you go into the next round. And so it's for me, that's why he's in this position, because the guys behind him, there's a lot of, we've seen Kamara even have success with bad teams. You know what I mean?
Last year
is a great example of that. With teams that just weren't scoring a lot of points, and the Saints were having trouble moving the ball, and Kamara still finished high. Where these other guys like Javonte, Swift, Akers, J.K. Dobbins, Ezekiel Elliott's a whole other conversation. He's not ranked in either of our top 10s. Spoiler. But some of these other guys now have a lot of these question marks, and Kamara has question marks that he still had going into last year.
Question marks. Yeah.
And so it's I don't know. I'm willing to take the risk on Kamara and just eat it if he ends up sucking. But he could move down my board. I think there's a lot of variables too, like just ranking him 11, 12, or 13 because it's like, we don't know what's going to happen is stupid. Like, I'm going to rank him 9 now because I know he's good.
Yes.
And if the Saints get a good quarterback and they keep Michael Thomas and they have a decent offensive line, then that offense actually could end up being okay if they somehow figure it out, right?
Yes.
Whereas if they go out and they get no quarterbacks and it's who's that, Trevor Siemian? Is that their third-string quarterback? Second-string quarterback? I don't even know. But he goes out and he has to play for a full season for them while they tank. Then I'm a little bit more concerned about Kamara, but there's also the opportunity that they completely trade away all of their valuable assets, which would include Kamara and Mike Thomas and some of those other guys. So they trade those guys away, and Alvin Kamara would end up on a better football team with similar opportunity. So that is why I have him ranked to 9. With that being said, I'll shut the frick up.
Yeah, no. All of my rankings, like you said, they're based on right now, today, in March. Okay. Mm-hmm. And as of right now, Michael Thomas is on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, their quarterback situation we don't know, but it probably won't be any worse than Taysom Hill, which it was for half the season last year. And Alvin Kamara, with Winston, he was much better, but even with Taysom Hill, he was at least okay for fantasy purposes. He only had 3.7 yards per carry, which is disgusting, a career low, because of that offense. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much better that would be depending on what they do. But even so, even how horrible he was on the ground last year, the offense wasn't great. Quarterback play was Winston and Taysom Hill. Mm-hmm. He was 5th in points per game among running backs still. Mm-hmm. And I think he finished as with the RB8 last year, in 13 games. So he's still a very good player. Now he's someone who definitely, in July could be ranked 15th on this list,
right?
Or maybe he could be 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. He could move up a couple spots. He's someone who can move around. But as of today, I put him 9 because I know he's still a good player. And yes, there are question marks with his situation. But if there's a rookie quarterback, I think he's going to get dump offs. He's still going to be heavily involved in the Saints offense.
Yeah.
So I think he'll be involved enough where he's based on what he did last year, it's going to be similar, which would put him in this range. And there are rumors, though, about potentially, he got arrested. So I don't know how that situation is playing out. Mm-hmm. But he was also, just like Michael Thomas, involved in some trade rumors before he got arrested.
Yep.
So that could obviously change things, too, if he gets traded. Like, let's say he goes to the Bills. That could... You can make the argument he would be ranked higher than 9 at that situation, right? So,
I think a good medium right here is 9.
I think so too.
Yeah. It's like obviously he gets traded to the Bills. I would probably rank him top 6 or 7, maybe top 5.
Me too.
And if he ends up staying on the Saints with Trevor Siemian, then he could go 12.
They
13.
trade Michael Thomas.
They trade Michael Thomas. He could go down to like 12 or 13 for me. Where he still is probably going to be like Swift. Good production, but not good opportunity to score or do anything else. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of where the separating factor is like Kamara will probably get a lot of yardage and get a lot of utilization, but if high volume, but if there's not a lot of like red zone opportunities, then you're gonna end up looking at Alvin Kamara being like, that was a kind of a bust of a pick. So it's like, it could go either way, and that's why he's 9 for me, like I said. So anyway, let's move on to the next couple guys that we have here, and we'll talk really quickly about them. But I'm interested. So I have Javonte 10.
Mm-hmm.
Rick has DeAndre Swift 10.
Yes.
Now, Swift, I believe, is 11 or 12 on my list. Where is Javonte for you?
He is
or
probably...
my rankings, I say list. Rankings.
Yeah. I wouldn't put him any lower than 11 right now. I think he'd probably be 11. So it's not like this is crazy. But I'll tell you why I have DeAndre Swift ahead of him.
Okay.
As of right now. Because again, what I just said about Kamara, I'll say about Javonte. I am making these rankings based off of today in March. And based off of today, Melvin Gordon is still a Denver Bronco. Their quarterback situation, I don't know. And I would just, if I'm drafting right now, I think I'd rather have, for just this year, I think I'd rather have DeAndre Swift.
Yep.
Now, in July, if the Broncos don't have Melvin Gordon and their quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, then Javonte Williams might be a top 5 running back for me. I honestly might put him I might be the highest person on Javonte. I might have him number 3 or 4. Like, I would put him very high depending on his situation.
Yeah.
I think he's a super talented back. But I just looked up Melvin Gordon. You want to know what the latest reports are on Melvin Gordon? Is the Broncos want him back. He wants to be back, and he's expected to be back with the Broncos. Disgusting. Now, I will let it slide if they bring in a high-level quarterback, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson. Get a guy like that. Okay? But as of right now, especially if Melvin Gordon is still on this team, I just don't know if I can put him ahead of DeAndre Swift in March. Because I still like Swift a lot, and I think the Lions' offense wasn't even as bad as people think it was last year. I mean, it definitely wasn't good, don't get me wrong. But it was, like, the Saints' offense, I think, might have been worse than the Lions' offense. The Saints just had an elite defense, which is why they won a ton of games. But the Lions' offense was definitely bottom half of the league, and it was probably bottom 10, but it might have been, like, in the mid-20s. And they're going to have a ton of draft picks, a ton of cap space. There are already rumors that they're trying to get Mike Williams, might throw a ton of money at him. They're going to get a receiver or two. Their offensive line is okay. They might get a quarterback. Who knows? But, like, their offense should improve next year.
You're a Lions fan over here.
I'm
or you
not
live with a Lions fan.
Listen. I like some Lions players. That's all. I don't like the Lions. Right? I like DeAndre Swift. I like TJ Hawkinson.
Don't lie. We all love Dan Campbell.
I like Dan Campbell. Okay, so see, this is what I'm saying. Anyway, DeAndre Swift was obviously pretty good last year, especially before he got hurt. He was really, really good. He was at one point a top 5 running back in terms of points per game. He ended up finishing like right below Dalvin Cook, so he's 12th. If you take out McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, you put him at 10th. And that's kind of where I'm ranking him right now. But he has a very high ceiling if that offense gets any better. And if they use him more on the ground. I mean, a lot of his points came in the air, and I don't think that's going to change next year. If he gets more heavily involved in the rushing as well, watch out.
Yeah. I'll start with Swift because my guy is Javonte at 10.
Do you have Swift 11?
I think I have him 11 or 12.
Okay.
So I don't have the my Fantasy Pros program opened and saved. So it's on my other computer. Yeah, I have multiple computers. Get on my face. Anyway, so I think for Swift, and I had Swift last year, so I know all about the. At one point last year, he had top 5. Like, he was a top 5. He wasn't even ranked top 5 for a lot of the season. And I think he has that upside. I think he really does have that upside. Like, if you're drafting and you end up with Swift, like, feel good about it. This year, I'm sticking to my, and I guess like,
you just stomped yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm going through some thoughts in my mind because I guess I'm contradicting myself by ranking Najee 5, but I'm going away from because I do believe DeAndre Swift is talented, but I'm going away from the buying into these sucky offenses. And I like the Lions, and I think there's some assets there that they can mess with. Their offensive line does not suck. You know,
they sold, baby.
They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he was decent last year, and he's a good too. And if they add a secondary wide receiver, I think, that secondary wide receiver could be the Jamar Chase to the T. Higgins up in here. So, like, the question is, what's going on at quarterback? And I don't hate Jared Goff, but he's not the answer. That's for sure.
It's definitely not the answer.
I think he will be the quarterback in 2022, I should say. But there's a lot of things about the Detroit Lions that aren't good. And they do really like to use these two running backs, not just Jamal Williams, but they like to, and not just DeAndre Swift, they like to get Jamal Williams involved, which is horribly moronic, in my opinion. I love you, Jamal Williams, as a person, but not as a football player. I just don't know. I don't know what the Lions' identity offensively is. I don't know what they want it to be, and it should be through Swift, honestly. Swift and Hawk. But
yes,
they don't do that, and it's really confusing sometimes. With that being said, if they do make some of the changes that you're saying, Rick, Swift could 100% jump up for me because I do like him. I actually like him a little bit more than Javonte. But for me, I just look at how not good the Lions are at the current moment, and I think I don't want to, as a fantasy player, buy into that atrocity of an offense. It's like I don't want to be. I had 2 Lions this year, bro. Spent the whole year trying to get rid of them,
I know,
and no one wanted them.
But so I just looked up the stats from 2021 this past season. Yes, the Lions' offense was definitely bad, but there were worse offenses in the league. They finished 25th in points.
Was Washington one of the? That's the big one.
That's not good. Yeah, 25th in points is not good. But they finished 22nd in total offense, so 22nd in yards.
Still not
so
good.
Like that's not good. No, it's definitely not good, but it's not horrible. Considering
it's on the
potential
edge of being
changes
sucky to mediocre.
But if they add the wide receiver, they have, I believe they have 3 picks in the top 30.
Okay.
Or top 30 something.
Do we
top
think it's going to change it this year? I don't think so.
No, but you could go from like 22 to like 17. And that could make a huge difference for DeAndre Swift.
I don't think you can go from 24 to 17 in scoring.
I was referring to yards because they finished 22nd in yards. Yeah. In scoring, they were 25th?
Yeah.
So you think they could go from 25th to that really will depend on the quarterback though too. But they could go from 25th to 20.
Like I said, to me, there's no change at quarterback. Like they're going with Jared Goff. And
they'll go with Goff for at least half the year. If they draft a rookie, I could see them maybe making a switch. Like if they draft Malik Willis, we'll find out.
That's what I'm saying. Like the mid-season switch from Goff to a rookie quarterback, is that going to be a good thing? Because like even when the Bears switched from
Dalton to Fields,
did that help Monty?
Didn't really change. No, not Monty. It helped Mooney a little bit. Well, I guess Darnell Mooney was pretty decent anyway.
But like
it didn't really their offense.
It didn't really improve their offense. It didn't really make them worse. And I actually think David Montgomery kind of dropped a little bit just because there wasn't really a lot there for him in terms of production. So I look at Swift the same way. He's a ridiculously good running back. Like I think you give him the opportunity share in a good offense, and he could be great. Top 5 type player, which we saw at times this year. But I just don't think with the Lions as they currently are formulated, he can do that. We'll see what they change in the offseason. We will. But those are my thoughts on Swift. With that being said, I really only have 1 or 2 spots off of where I have Javonte right now. I do think because there's a little foresight in my rankings, I do think that the Denver Broncos are going to end up with one of these quarterbacks that are available. Yeah. Possibly. I don't think it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. It sounds like he's going back to Green Bay. But there's a lot floating around, and I think they're going to be involved in something. And with that being said, if and when that does happen, that'll change the entire offense for Denver. I think, like, if you were to, let's say, there's no truth behind any of these. There's no rumors floating around about any of this. This is just all like speculation. But let's say you put Deshaun Watson right now on the Detroit Lions, and you put the same Deshaun Watson on the Denver Broncos. Who is the better offense?
The Broncos.
And who would have the better running back at that point? I would say Denver.
Yeah,
not
but it's close. It's not like it's. I mean, it wouldn't be like Lance if you gave them both Deshaun Watson. I don't think it would be like a huge difference, but I would take Javonte in that situation. Yes.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at. Not that they're going to get Deshaun Watson, but I think if you add a quarterback to that mix, they will make so much of a difference in Denver's offense that they would become maybe one of the top 5 offenses in the AFC. And I think with that being said, that would then in turn give Javonte a heck of a lot of opportunity to score, to get a lot of yardage, to prove he should be the guy and that Melvin Gordon shouldn't be anywhere near. And I love you, Melvin Gordon. You were actually pretty good this year, better than I thought, but Javonte is the guy. He should be the guy. That is my biggest concern because I do think there's going to be a change at quarterback. I do think their offense is going to improve, and I do think if Javonte gets full opportunity that he is going to be the guy in Denver. We played around with this last year. Marlon Mack, bunch of other guys went back to Indy. Maybe Jonathan Taylor ain't going to get the work. And then he did.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying that Melvin Gordon is going to disappear. He's going to be there, but there's more of a shot that as the season goes along and as time goes on, Javonte Williams is going to end up. I was going to say Jonathan Taylor. That's not right. Javonte Williams is going to end up the guy in Denver. And so for me, I think it's a high-end risk to take Javonte over Deandre Swift. I really do. I kind of feel that way. I think it's a risk. It's a big risk, but I'm willing to take it. With that being said, DeAndre Swift is ranked 10 right now. Javonte is ranked 9. So they're even higher.
It's not a huge risk.
What'd you say?
It's not a huge risk.
Not a huge risk. So, I mean, it could be. It's still a first-round pick.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely.
But like I said, you make arguments that make me want to take Swift because I do like him over Javonte.
It's funny though because depending on what happens this offseason, I could be even higher on Javonte than you. And the expert.
Yes, 100%. Like if where would you put Javonte Williams if Watson got traded there or Russ or Rodgers?
With Melvin Gordon?
Yes.
Or without? Okay, so with Melvin Gordon there, but they get one of those quarterbacks, I'd probably put him probably 7 or 6.
Wow. It's a reasonable argument, though.
Probably like 7. Probably 7.
7? It's a reasonable argument, though, that you make pertaining to like Javonte and there still being Melvin Gordon there. That's scary.
It is scary. But my hope, though, is they just kind of fade Melvin Gordon away. Mm-hmm. Like he gets less and less work. We thought that was going to happen this year as the season went on. It didn't. But maybe after a full off season and Javonte's not a rookie anymore. He's going into year 2. Mm-hmm. Melvin Gordon's going to be 28 years old. I think he might even – is he 28 or 29? He is
Melvin Gordon, I think he's almost 30.
He'll be 29. Yeah, he'll be 29 this year. So I'm hoping they kind of just fade him. He kind of turns into like a third down back. Yeah. And Javonte is like not a total workhorse, but close to it. Something like Nick Chubb.
Somewhere around that.
Yeah. And maybe Nick Chubb with a little bit more passing work. And ends up being a top 10 running back.
Yeah. We're not too far off on Javonte and Swift. That's just kind of why, really slowly and methodically in my mind, why I have Swift behind Javonte. But that could change, obviously. Things could change in the offseason. Maybe Denver doesn't get a quarterback. That would be poop.
That would be poop. Right now, ESPN just released an article the other day saying that Washington is going to pursue a quarterback heavy this offseason. So they might be the ones to land the big fish.
Okay, so I was going to say a couple other like housekeeping notes here with running back rankings. Antonio Gibson, where do you think you're going to have him?
Yeah, where do I think I'm going to have him, or where do I have him right now?
Oh, do you have him ranked?
I don't have him ranked, but he's probably like in the 13 range for me right now.
Okay.
12 or 13, but that's with Tyler Heineke as the quarterback. So if they get an upgrade at quarterback, I could see him maybe sneaking into the top 10.
I have
maybe.
Gibson right now. I think I did up to, I want to say 17 or 18. I have Gibson 15 right now.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
I
think he's in that range. He's in 13 to 15, but if they get a quarterback, he's definitely going to be top 12.
What about Cam Akers? Where you got Cam Akers? What do you think you're going to have?
I'm high. I never thought I would say this, but I'm high on Cam Akers. Was it last year? I was kind of lower on him, and I was glad I was because he wasn't great until the end of the season. And he took off in the playoffs, and then going into this year, he was, late first, early second round pick, and then he tore his Achilles.
Sheesh.
He came back, didn't look as good. So now there's people ranking him as low as like 20. I probably have him higher than Gibson as of today. I would have him, I think, 12.
Exactly where I have him.
Yeah, I'd have him 12.
So I got Javonte 10, Swift 11, Akers 12.
Yeah, I would have Akers 12, but I think I go with Gibson 13.
And then there's there's a conglomerate of players that
there's a couple. David Montgomery too. He's flying up boards.
I got him 17 right now.
He's flying up boards. He's expert consensus 14. Obviously Ezekiel Elliott we haven't touched on. Saquon. We'll talk about this guy. Out of curiosity, do you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire ranked?
I did not rank him in the top 20.
Yeah, how the mighty have fallen.
He'll probably end up between 20 and 25.
Yeah,
definitely. But
he'll be high 20s, but yeah.
After it's funny though because everyone's talking about how there's a lot of guys you have Jonathan Taylor, just to go off some guys: Taylor, McCaffrey, Henry, Cook, Harris, Eckler, Chubb, Mixon, Kamara, Williams, Swift, Akers, Elliott, Jones, Aaron Jones, Gibson, Barkley, Montgomery, J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris. There's a lot of guys that are really good. But
even Elijah Mitchell.
Even Elijah Mitchell's in there. I don't know how I feel about him yet, so I don't know. But then but just think about this. You hear all those names, and then you just after that, Fournette, Dillon, A.J. Dillon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Michael Carter, James Conner, Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, Travis Etienne, Rashad Penny.
There's guys I like in that list, but definitely drops a tier.
It's not as
definitely drops a tier.
I don't feel like I've seen a running back ranking in the top 20 where I've liked pretty much everyone.
Yeah, the top 20 is
besides Elijah
right
Mitchell?
On 20. It's right on 20. So I know who your 20th RB is going to be.
Yeah, he's probably going to slip right down the boards on me.
Whatever order it is, those 20 guys feel like they're definitely the top 20. Though.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, do you think James Conner makes a push if
no,
depending on what happens? Well, so if what the heck is his name? If Chase Edmonds leaves,
I think he's going to get drafted high
with the Cardinals.
Say it again. Sorry,
he can make a. If Chase Edmonds leaves and James Conner re-signs with the Cardinals, so he's the only running back on the Cardinals, do you think he can make a push for that top 20 spot? I don't think he would take over any. No. Maybe
I don't know.
Maybe Aaron Jones if Rodgers leaves Green Bay.
Josh Jacobs or James Conner?
Josh Jacobs.
Leonard Fournette or James Conner?
Oh, see, if Fournette stays in Tampa, I'd rather James Conner.
This is just the consensus. What I have for consensus: Harris, Damian Harris, or James Conner?
Damian Harris.
Clyde, Conner.
Clyde, but it's closer than you think.
Michael Carter.
I'm not high on Clyde. That's another close one. I think.
Oh, dude.
I think James Conner.
Yeah, I would take James Conner. Yeah. So there's a lot to go through and discuss this offseason. There's a lot of guys that could, in that third, fourth, because obviously the top 20 are not going to get drafted as the the top 20 picks.
Mm-hmm. No.
You'll see some of these guys I could see Barkley end second, early third. Monty's going to be a third-round pick. Dobbins is going to be a third-round pick. Mitchell's probably going to be a third-round pick.
I love Dobbins in the third round. Holy cow. Sign me up.
Jacobs. Don't rip your pants off yet. Mitchell probably I'm sorry, I already said Mitchell. Josh Jacobs is going to be a third-round pick. Harris will probably be late third, early fourth. I could see Clyde going somewhere in the fourth. So like there's gonna be some backs here that are gonna slip. Miles,
you know who I
probably
super
gonna slip
early
in the 5th round. Go ahead.
He might climb up boards. Actually, I don't think he will. So I kind of like him at the spot. It's Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne. I like that 5th round.
James Robinson.
No, I do like J-Rob, but J-Rob tore his Achilles in the last week of the season.
Holy sheesh. That's good. Now, well, no, that's not good news. I do like James Robinson.
Travis Etienne will probably be the passing back.
But he might miss like 6 weeks into the season.
I could see Travis Etienne getting like 50 catches this year, and then if he gets the carries,
say things like that.
And Rashad Penny.
And he's ranked 29th?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay. I like Etienne.
You know what's funny? That bonehead that took over the football team last year, I think he forced them to draft Travis Etienne in the 1st round. And then obviously it's not his fault that Etienne like tore his ACL, but like what a waste. And then they fire him like 10 weeks into the season. And like what a waste of a draft pick by an organization when you already have a running back that can be
I know, it really
good.
was.
It was such a waste of a draft. He's going to be a wide receiver, I think. Like that's a hot take.
That's fine. If he can play the Cordell Patterson role for the Jaguars.
You mean Deebo Samuel?
Or Deebo Samuel role. If the Jaguars are any better, which they were dead last year in everything for offense, then watch out, Travis Etienne.
But anyway, with that being said, there are your top 10 running backs for 2022 fantasy football. It has been a good show, good program. That was good. That last 10 minutes of the show, really helpful. I think we'll break down more over time as we do that. But anyway, thanks for listening. We'll see you next Tuesday, my friends.
See you guys.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.